Hello, Village. This is Mendel Miller.
I'm Tia Davis.
And I'm Tamisha Williams.
Welcome, welcome. First Friday, y'all.
Yes, welcome back.
This is episode
15.
All right, of the Village Podcast, and we have a very special guest with us today. We are welcoming Joe Briggs, who is counsel for the NFL Players Association. Welcome, Joe. Welcome to the Village.
Yes.
Thank you for coming to spend some time with us.
Yes. So, Joe, we want to start with you just giving us kind of a little short introduction. Tell us about yourself. Tell us who you are. The Village doesn't know you like I know you. So give them a little intro.
So first, thank you for having me here today. I am humbled to be able to join what I think is probably one of the best podcasts I've paid attention to lately. So thank you guys for allowing me to join, and hopefully I'll learn as much from you guys as I'm able to impart upon you today. My name is Joe. I'm a lawyer at the NFL Players Association. I'm also a professor at Georgetown University, teaching graduate students in both sports law and ethics. I've been in Washington, D.C. since 2006. Prior to working at the NFL Players Association, I was a legal fellow for a United States Senator, working on policy work for the senator around not only the Supreme Court decisions, Supreme Court nominees, but also working on some banking issues and other matters that came through our office. That work led to me transitioning to a job at the NFL Players Association, working with our financial programs department and our legal department, and also working on a number of different matters. So I have about 5 or 6 different buckets I'm responsible for that I'm sure we'll talk about once we get into this a little bit more. But the most important thing here is that I am my nephew's uncle and my niece's uncle. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, because their mama said that I had to be up early on to record this podcast.
Sure appreciate you, brother. I sure appreciate you. So I guess we can start. We have a lot of people in the Village, and they're listening, or y'all know some people who believe that their baby is going to the league. It doesn't matter what the league is. It can be NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB. What's the initials for soccer? Whatever soccer is.
MLS. It's MLS.
MLS. It can be any of those leagues. They just know their baby is going to the league. And while we understand and we believe that, we kind of wanted to just bring in an expert to talk through some of that. I don't think everyone thinks past that statement. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just that, and then they don't think about what goes into or what it takes to even get to the level to potentially go to the league. So if you would just give us a little inside start. I think you wanted to start kind of at the very beginning with Little League or Pop Warner, whatever it's called, where you're from.
Sure. Well, let's talk about football for a minute, right? Because that's where I work now. And, you know, that's one of the more popular things that's happening right now in our sports space. Though the NBA finals are getting ready to, complete themselves. I know that the Miami Heat pulled out a game last night, so it's going to be at least one more game. I'm sure there's some fans of the Miami Heat that are watching this and are excited about that. But let's talk about football first, right? So the history of football is one of very humble beginnings, but it has a very interesting beginning and an interesting story. And why is that important for family members to know, especially if you want your kid to play football or if you think your family member is going to become a professional in the sport? That's important because the history of something, how you start something, usually informs how you finish it. Mm-hmm. So let's start talking about the NFL. This is the 100th year of the NFL. Its 100th anniversary in existence happened earlier this season, back in September. with the NFL starting in about 1920. Now, professional football had been played in the country a few years before that National Football League was formed, first as the American Professional Football Association, and then 2 years later in 1922, officially changing its name to the National Football League. The original concept for what we now know as the National Football League was actually thought of and promoted by a Native American by the name of Jim Thorpe, who was actually the first commissioner and president of the National Football League. In the first year of its competitions, they had African-American coaches in the National Football League. But even before that, in the late 1800s, you had people like President Teddy Roosevelt, who was in the Rough Riders, and part of his army regimen were these guys who would go around the countryside and play football as a hobby and make money on the side when they weren't actually in the armed forces. It was a way that people would entertain themselves in what were called company towns. So, company towns, when if you are from the Midwest, you probably know when the folks came in to develop all the lumber and timber that was there, they needed some form of entertainment in the late 1800s. They couldn't turn on the TV. They would bring guys out, they would put them on the field, and they would make them play each other. But there were some guys that were really good at football that would travel around the countryside, and they would play on various teams all across the country. Those guys then decided that they should make it a more professional endeavor. One of those guys that made that professional endeavor happen was Jim Thorpe. And Jim Thorpe came up with this idea and this concept of creating a national football league where all of the men were professionals, because he knew that folks enjoyed this playing of football that happened in these random places to enjoy and entertain people in smaller ways. But Jim Thorpe learned about football, and I promise you I'm going somewhere with this. Jim Thorpe learned about football when he was much younger. As I mentioned, he was a Native American. He was the son of an elder and chief of one of the tribes out of Oklahoma. But how does Jim Thorpe get from Oklahoma to playing in the National Football League? Well, he goes through what was called the Carlisle Indian School. And the Carlisle Indian School was an assimilation school that the government put together so that they can take Native American kids who they had forced to go through the Trail of Tears and put them on Native American reservations and bring them back into the population, assimilated, teaching them English, cutting their hair, and making them Americanized. Jim Thorpe was one of those kids who came through the Carlisle Indian School to be Americanized, but he was also one of those kids that kept running away because he didn't like the American traditional education. He was a Native American kid. He was used to growing up on plains and reservations and running wild and running free. And here you are taking him, putting him in a classroom for 8 hours a day, making him wear a uniform, and you're cutting his hair and telling him he has to sit still. Well, it wasn't until a coach came to the Carlisle Indian School that implemented a football program that then the Native American kids started to flourish, including Jim Thorpe. So Jim Thorpe learned football, learned sports from this coach who came to the Carlisle Indian School. And it's a really unique story because the guy who came in as their coach was this guy who was a former lawyer who hated being a lawyer so much that he quit being a lawyer and became a football coach. But you see, back then in the early 1900s, football was really big on college campuses. And not only was football really big, but if you were really good at football, because mostly white students played football, their boosters and the people who were alums of those same schools would give them, the star football players, the best jobs. So this guy had gone to Cornell. He had been a really good football player at Cornell. And as a result of that, he had been invited to become a lawyer, go to law school at Cornell thereafter. Then he goes to law school at Cornell and then graduates from law school at Cornell and gets a really good job because he's this very famous football player. And then he decides, I hate all of this and I quit my job and I want to go teach these kids at this Carlisle Indian School for very little money how to play football and sports. That changed America. That one decision by this one guy who knew what his privilege was, who thought that it would be better for him to use the tools of him being a coach versus him going on to be a lawyer and working on Wall Street, changed the way everyone else in America looks at the world of sport and football primarily. One, because he then coached Jim Thorpe, and Jim Thorpe then goes on to help create the American Professional Football Association, which then becomes the National Football League. Mm-hmm. But two, because he developed a system of training young people how to play sports. because that coach's name was Glenn Warner.
Oh.
Oh,
And
okay.
his student, who was Jim Thorpe, gave him a nickname, Pop.
Pop.
And the Pop Warner
Warner.
football system is still in place today. In
Wow.
fact, all of these other small football systems, Optimus and the other systems that have now grown out of it, were all based on the Pop Warner system of teaching you football skills.
Look at that.
Right? So you got to know where stuff starts in
Mhm.
order to figure out kind of how it finishes. So, you know, what started as this thing that was supposed to be an educational tool to help these kids who were trying to assimilate into American schools and help them calm down so that they would be able to focus their attention on education and not be considering running away because the education portion was boring, has become something that's now an extracurricular activity. And no longer is the focus of football to help them with their education, but rather football has sometimes become a distraction to the education. So when I'm talking to parents about why their kids, you know, what their kids need to do to become professional athletes, I try to remind them that one of the primary drivers of football was to make sure that your kid got out all of that energy that they needed so that they could focus on education. So start with that when you start talking about Pop Warner and Little League, all that other stuff. How can my kid make it to the next level, become a professional athlete? Well, they can use football to develop their leadership. They can use football to develop their listening ear. They can use football to become more coachable and to be open to learning. They're learning a system. And they can apply that system to every other part of their education and journey, not just their education while they're in school, but also their education from their job. There's a coach, there's a playbook, there are things that I have to do as a part of a team. In the classroom, there's a coach called the teacher, there's a playbook called my textbook, and I'm a part of a team, the rest of the class. We're all here to learn together, right? And if we all work on listening to the coach, watching the playbook, and learning what we need to do, then we all win, get the touchdown, which is ultimately graduate from this and go on to whatever the next piece of my educational journey is and whatever the next piece of my life journey is. So if I'm talking to parents about it and I'm starting at that level, that's one of the base conversations that we have to have. Now we add tools and we build into that, right? One of the biggest challenges we see when we get to the next level, college, then pros, or how do we deal with some of the off the field stuff that sometimes get added in? And I say to you that if I have a good foundation, I know why I'm playing football. I'm playing football to win. And I know that I'm in this system, coach, playbook, team. Then I know as long as I'm doing the things that I need to do in those three spaces, listening to my coach, studying my playbook, paying attention to my teammates so that we can all win, then these outside distractions don't matter as much. So I'll stop there because I'm just talking.
So I'm curious about in your talking to families, how many of those families do you believe are looking at this as a way for my young person to get a better education? How many of them are looking at it as an opportunity to achieve some type of status, money? Because what you're describing as the beginning of this whole football thing, which is huge, by the way, is huge. That's not what I get when I have families talking about, I want my child to go to the league, or the young person themselves, you know, I'm going to play, you know. So when you're talking to families, how many of them do you think just
100%. 100%. It's 100%. 100% of the families I talk to think that their child is going to either earn a scholarship or make it to professional football. And I would say that, you know, those are valid thoughts. There are ways that you can make that happen, but they may not come as a result of your athletic ability, right? And it's a mindset shift that we need to make, because you playing football could lead to you having better focus on your grades, which also leads to you getting a scholarship, right? You playing football could also lead to you meeting someone who can help you work at a football team and earn more money as a professional working in sports than you ever would have as a player on the field. But to answer your direct question, 100% of the families that have their children participating in extracurricular activities these days, it seems like almost 100% are doing it because they think there's a perceived financial benefit to gain from their participation, whether that's through a direct athletic scholarship or eventually becoming a professional athlete. And many times that mindset can do a disservice to those athletes and those families. It's not just the athletes, it's also the families, because within that is a built-in system of reinforcement and sometimes punishment that leads to many other problems, right? The problems of it seems cute when you see a child say, I'm going to play Pop Warner football because eventually I want to make it to the NFL and buy my mom a house. But think about the other side of that, the pressure that begins to build as the reality of your ability set in, and you start to realize you may not actually be able to do that. Now, sure, most folks listening to this podcast and watching it will probably say, but that was just a child's dream. Of course, he didn't really believe that. Well, no, actually, that child, that boy or that girl actually did. And they lived their entire lives with that file stuck in the back of their file cabinet of their brain, that all of these things I'm doing, yeah, sure, some of it's about me, but a great part of it is about the promise that I made to my mom that I was going to buy her house and she wouldn't have to work anymore. So now, let's walk it all the way through. I've gone to college. At first, I was a 5-star guy coming out of my high school because I was always the man in my Pop Warner. Then I got to high school and I played really well. And all of these schools recruited me. Now I'm in college. And because I spent so much time focused on football, I didn't really spend as much time focused on academics. And that's what everyone is doing here, right? Because I have to start in order for the scouts to see me. And if I'm not focused on football more than I am studying, then I'm not going to be able to start, and I'm not going to be able to buy my mom a house. So now I have to eschew my studies so that I can focus on the weight room and the playbook and the coaches and making sure that they like me and making sure that they see me doing all this stuff so that I can get the playing time, because that's the only way I'm going to get to the next level. And now the scouts aren't really coming around, right? And I'm not going to make it to the next level. But eventually this scholarship is going to end. After 4 years or 5 years, the scholarship is going to end. But because I didn't focus on my education, I've now been pushed into a degree path that I didn't want, because I never really thought about it. They told me to take these classes and I'm going to graduate and I'm going to stay eligible and I'm going to keep playing football. So now I'm graduating with a degree in a subject that I never liked. And I'm going to be forced in a career path that I don't really understand. So I'm either going to have to go down that path and walk the plank to jump into that career path, or I'm going to have to retool myself after I graduate with no experience in whatever path that I now choose. And I'm still not going to be able to buy my mom a house. So now I have all of those pressures piled up on me, as well as the societal pressures of just being this Black guy, maybe. Or just being a former athlete, maybe, because I'm bigger than everybody else. So people are naturally intimidated by me even coming in the spot. And I see what just happened to George Floyd, who was also a former athlete, who was also a little bigger than these cops that they just saw, who was also a guy who probably had some disappointment based on what he thought his athletic potential was, because he had friends that made it to the NBA and that wasn't what his path was eventually, right? So now I'm dealing with that chip that's on my shoulder, with society's outlook on me. And I'm also dealing with the fact that in the back of my brain, I still got this file that said, I needed to buy my mama a house because I promised my mama I was going to buy a house, and I promised my family I was going to take care of them. And now they call me because they know I'm the one who went to college, and I was the one who was supposed to make it, and I didn't make it, and now I got to go home for Thanksgiving. And they all know that we're going to be watching football on Thanksgiving. And on Thanksgiving, I'm supposed to be playing football because I was supposed to buy my mama a house because
Because when I was 5.
yeah, who's helping me deal with all that?
Mm-hmm.
Because the college I went to, they didn't have any counseling services after I got done. My eligibility was over, whether or not I finished my degree. They don't care. My high school coaches, they got fired or moved on. I was so good that I got a college scholarship. Then another school recruited them to go coach somewhere else. So now when I go home, you can never go home because home has moved, right?
Man.
So now I can't talk to my mom about this because I done disappointed my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I talking to my mom about this? I can't talk to my mom about like how I'm feeling because I'm failing her. I can't talk to my dad about it because I was supposed to buy my dad a truck to go to my mom's house. I can't talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
I can't talk to my teammates who actually made it to the league because every time I see them, I'm reminded that we went through the same practices. We went through the same weight sessions. We went through the same games. In some of those games, I was better than them. In some of those games, I was worse. But somebody who I don't know, who sits behind a computer and sits behind a phone, made a decision that they were the one and I wasn't.
Mm. Mm.
And I got all this on my chest. And my girl, who thought I was going to make it to the league, also just told me she's pregnant.
Oh.
And my mama just called me and told me that her light's about to go out. What am I supposed to do? Because I got to go back to this job that I don't like because I don't have a degree in something that can make me more money. And because I've been in this bubble for the last 4 years, I don't really know what people earn. I knew what I would have made if I would have made it to the NFL. First year salary in the NFL, $500,000. I'm good. I'm Gucci. My mom only made like $50,000, so I'm making 10 times as much as she is. I can take care of everybody. I'm dealing. But I never realized, like, my mom went to college, but she didn't go to college now. So when people come out of college now, I thought people that came out of college now made like $100,000. So I came out of college and I'm looking at all my classmates, these, other kids who were here actually in school learning all this stuff that did 2 internships in the summertime when they were actually here learning all of the stuff that they were paying to go to school for. And they had the ability to do those internships while I was out working out. And I see all of them buying their new BMWs and talking about how they're going to get their first home in big city USA because they're making 6 figures because they had those internships and they got those degrees in subjects that they really wanted to work in. And now they're very excited about the prospect of their future. And I'm looking at my life and I'm saying to myself, wait. All I see is disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I see disappointment and I see a guy that's selling me weed. Well, I see disappointment and I see a guy that's trying to get me to go to the club with him that's from the block.
Mm-hmm.
So now I got to figure out, because I can't talk to nobody. I ain't got no insurance. I don't have a counselor or a therapist. Not really into the church like that because I don't really trust them. And, well, I guess I'll just go to the club, figure out how I'm going to deal with this on my own with some other substance. Whether it be alcohol or something else.
So, Mr. Briggs, let me ask you this.
Ooh.
Let me ask you, that.
That's a lot of pressure.
That's deep.
Well,
Yeah.
But it's something that most people don't think about. So the fact that what I'm trying to do with this podcast is like, this is a side that y'all don't talk about. Everybody, like, you got to talk to the parents. The parents are putting these false hopes in these kids' head.
Yep.
And, now, blah, blah, blah. But what about those kids?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So here's what I want to know. And I just want for you to share your, just based on what you do for a living now and your experiences. I have a child. How old do you have to be to play Pop Warner? What is that? How old is that?
Depends. Usually starts around 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6. Okay. So I have a 5 or 6 year old. I think, oh, that's a good thing for him to do. I take him out to play Pop Warner, and we discover, looks like he has, because could they show some kind of talent at that age?
They can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he shows that he has some kind of talent for this sport. What do I do then as his parent? What kinds of things do I say to him? What kinds of expectations do I have? Because I'm hearing you talking about expectations and how that could lead to. So, because what I'm hoping we can do today is talk about the reality of what's happening and give some ways to help to change some of that. Right. So what do I do at that level? What kinds of messages do I want to send?
So that was the reason why I talked through all of that, right? Uh-huh. Because the one starting point that led down that path of disappointment was the insertion of an idea that my athletic ability will be the savior of myself and other people. Mm-hmm. So at 6 years old, when your kid comes back and a coach is giving him a bunch of praise for his athletic ability because he was able to do something, mm-hmm. and the kid sees other kids saying, like, yeah, I have to do this because I want to make my mama proud and I want to buy my mama a house. You can stop your kid and let them know that that's not their responsibility.
Yes.
Start there. That their responsibility here is to develop their body and develop their mind, and that these athletic exploits should help them release energy so that they can focus on their studies. And everything else will fall in place. So if you're asking me what I should do as a parent of a 6-year-old, I'm a parent of a 4-year-old. My kid is out doing some pumpkin patch picking right now, but his mom also wants him to participate in athletics. And the one thing that I said to her was like we have to be even keel parents when it comes to athletics. We can't always jump up and down and celebrate them because they've done something good, nor can we jump on them because they've done something bad. We have to teach them that these are all teachable moments, the good ones and the bad ones, and we have to make it seem like when we're watching them at athletic endeavors that we're engaged, but that we are not creating the highs and lows that they'll experience for the rest of their lives. So setting those realistic expectations about what their responsibility is in this moment and what their responsibilities will be in the future will take a lot of that pressure off. But being earnest when you do it, right? Because some parents say that, but then in the back of their minds, they're already picking out the Escalade that they go buy when that kid gets drafted, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A surprising number of parents these days, like I said, I've been in this business now for 15 years. And when I first got in the business, there were a lot more parents that were immediately quitting their jobs as soon as their kids got drafted. That put a lot of pressure on their kids. Mm-hmm. Put a lot of pressure on kids. And listen, I'll be honest enough with this podcast that I too was one of those kids. I didn't play football until my senior year of high school. I didn't play little league sports at all. I was always, I had an older brother who always got hurt. So I didn't play little league sports. I didn't play any organized sport of high school. And as a result of that, I was good enough to earn, fortunately, scholarships to go on to play college football. And I made promises to my mom too, right? And fortunately, I also have been a really hard worker. And though my career path didn't include working as an NFL player, my mom hasn't worked. This is 2020. My mom stopped working in 2001, which was the same year that she would have stopped working if I had been drafted in the National Football League in 1998. I told her, give me 3 years of my NFL career, you'll never have to work again. So I told my mom that when I was a high school kid, and it was a promise that I kept to my mom. My mom hasn't worked since 2001. It's 2020. She's still alive. She hasn't had to worry about where a bill has been paid for. Now, that's been a tremendous amount of pressure on me, which is also one of the reasons why I do this work, because I wouldn't want other kids to have that level of pressure on them. And my mom didn't force that pressure on me. It's a promise that I made. I'm a man of my word. I have the ability and had the ability to do it. And I worked extra hard to make sure it happened. But also within that was me working really hard to take care of other people in times when I could have either been focused more on myself or the development of my own family. And I realize now, as the 43-year-old guy, the thing that I didn't realize as the 23-year-old guy, which is that I didn't have to do that. Like, my mom didn't ask me to do it. I made a promise as a kid that I wanted to honor. But if I'm talking to the parents, I'm saying to the parents, let your kid off the hook. When you hear them, see them making those kind of statements or moves, it's okay to let them off the hook. I want you to do the work yourself as to why you even want your kid to be on the hook. And then figure out a way to let them off the hook. Make them be responsible for themselves. Make them enjoy their lives, the life that they're creating. But don't leave them on the hook to make your life better just because you happen to be their parent.
And Mr. Briggs, I think you can actually speak to it because you've lived it. I mean, you had that pressure, that self-imposed pressure of taking care of your mom. Like you said, she didn't ask for that. And you said it's a lot of pressure for a kid because you lived it. So when you're talking to it, I hope our listeners realize that you're talking from experience and they can get that from you and hopefully let their kids off to the hook also. Because I think that's a big thing in our community. My baby's going to make it. He's going to buy me a house. I'm going to stop working. And I've always told my son, it's not your job to take care of me. That's not your job. Never been your job. I think we need to let our kids.
It's the opposite. It's your job as the parent to take care of the child.
Yes.
Listen, like I said, I love my mom, and she has turned down more stuff from me than I tried to give her. And I want to make sure that it's clear, like, that she never wanted me to take care of her, never asked me to, but I made a promise. And over time, you grow and you learn and you're developed in a different way. I'm proud of what I've been able to do with my parents and, with some help from my brothers and sisters to make sure that they're okay. And that they still, my parents still do some work at their church. My dad's a pastor at a church in Los Angeles, and my mom works at the church as well. That they do what they need to do to make their lives as comfortable as they want to make it. But as a base level, right, like, I made a promise and I've stuck by that promise and I've done what I needed to do to make that promise actually happen. But to this part of the conversation, I'll say again that as a parent of a person who's either in that high school level or even the Pop Warner level, as the question that was just asked, like, what should that parent be doing to prepare themselves for that moment? Making sure that you do the work on yourself, that you understand why it is that you're experiencing this in this way, meaning why do I have these expectations of my child? And then also, like, how am I going to make sure that I don't allow my expectations to infect what happens with my child's life?
So the same parent, child exhibits some talent in Pop Warner, they make it to high school, people are actually coming to see them. I believe they call them recruiters. So they're coming out to see them. It's pretty clear, this kid, he's got it. What are the messages? And you alluded to it a little just now, but what are the messages? What are the things that parents should be doing and saying and making sure happens at that high school level leading into college? Because the messages, as you already know.
So one thing that I'll say to the parent of those middle school and high school kids when the recruiters start coming into that space, and I bring in middle school because for the basketball ones, that's when the AAU circuit starts, and that's when the recruitment for basketball camps in the summertime and all that stuff starts as well. And then when we get to high school for the for the football players, that's when their lives start to see more recruiters and people coming in with college invitations to come out to high school sports and come to college football games in a traditional year. What you should be doing is making sure that you moderate their expectations in all those ways. Those are time periods when they should be learning their fundamentals, period. Are they lifting the weights that they need to lift? Are they studying their playbook? Are they paying attention to their coach? And are they focusing on their team and making their team better? And as a result of that, they are getting better as well. I'm never going to move off those 3 points. To the parent, making sure that they're doing the work, that they don't get too excited about what's happening, but also educating themselves about what is actually happening around them. Knowing the difference between, an AAU invite to come to a team versus a basketball camp that's sponsored by a shoe company, and what that actually means versus what it seems like it means, right? What it actually means is I'm inviting you to come out and show me your talent. I am not saying that you are talented. I am saying that you have enough talent to come out and show me whether or not you can actually compete with these other kids who I also think may have talent. Signing to and doing a tournament with a shoe company does not mean, oh, I'm guaranteed to make it to the NBA now, and this company is likely going to have a shoe deal with me waiting on the other side of this rainbow. What it actually means is, I think that you have enough talent and you may be able to help me sell product. So I'm going to put you through a tournament to see exactly how well you can help me sell product, while also allowing me to make sure that you have some brand loyalty to me, regardless of however the rest of your life plays out. If you become a professional athlete, then maybe I can sign you to a contract at a discount. Or if you don't become a professional athlete, you love your experiences with me so much that you'll continue to give me your hard-earned money for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it actually means. When it gets to football players in high school, you have not the same pressure from AAU, but these new tournaments called 7-man football or
7-on-7
tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
These 7-on-7 tournaments and some of these combines are doing much of the same thing. They're coming up with these traveling squads that allow players to go out and show their talents and more opportunities to display their talents. But in actuality, there's a whole system of adults that are keying on parents and their desires to see their kids be financially, become financially solvent. But at the same time, you are just paying these people money. And some of those people ain't being honest with you about the level of talent that your kid may have or the level of opportunity that they can provide to your kid.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make sure that you are doing the work and the research to figure out exactly what it is that you're doing. So if I'm talking to a parent of a middle school or a high school kid and their kid has some level of talent, I'm going to ask them what their plan is. What's your plan? Because all these people are bringing their plans to you. And every one of their plans, I can guarantee you, has a benefit for them.
Mm-hmm.
What is your plan for your child?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the plan should look like. Okay, well, let's figure it out. Who do you know? You know your coach at your high school. Do you know your athletic director at your high school? Do you have a friend who's played either college sports or professional sports? Call them up, have them come over, have them sit down, have them talk through from here to there what they experience. Not what you should do, what they experience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, based on that information, go do the research on all these people that are contacting you. Look them up, Google them,
Mm-hmm.
check them out on Facebook, social media, Twitter. If all they're ever talking about is getting money and popping bottles and also something about the kids, then that should let you know something, right? Where their focus is. If you never hear them talk about academics, ever, like they never talk to you about academics, they never even ask you about academics, you don't know where they went to college at. They're just somebody that showed up on the scene and started asking you questions about your child. Listen, if your child wasn't in athletics and some random person called your house and started asking you questions about how they can get money to your child, what would you do? You would be concerned.
Mm-hmm.
It's different because now my child is an athlete. Did common sense go out of the window because he was able to run a ball? No.
Yes. Oh.
Where's your common sense? What is your plan? What is
Mhm.
your plan?
Yeah. So just because you just mentioned it, I was gonna bring you back to the role of education with the athlete. The three of us are always, we emphasize when we talk about them, student athletes. The student comes first. Can you just talk, what would you say to students and, well, I'll say athletes and the parents as far as, yes, my child is talented. We'll go back to that parent that Mendel was talking about. They're in middle school, they're in high school, they're getting these invitations. So their focus is shifting over to, oh my goodness, look at this, I could be this. What do you say to them about education?
Well, to know where you're going, you have to know where you came from, right? So let's talk about student athlete as a term, right? The history of the word itself, or the word, the hyphenated word, is replete with problems, problematic from the start. The whole terminology student athlete was created specifically by the NCAA to make sure that students would not be compensated for the labor that they put in as athletes. Period.
Check that out.
There was no, the history is intrinsically tied to speeches and patterns by the NCAA that said, hey, we can, if they're students, then they're just students. But if they're athletes, then we may have to compensate them. But if we create this hybrid word called student athletes, then now we've created a black hole that says we no longer have to compensate them because they are student athletes. And that term has lived for 60, 70 years, with most people not challenging it, and many people thinking that they're using it as a proper descriptor, when in fact, if I'm a student, I'm a student, period. And if I happen to be an athlete, I'm an athlete, period. You do not have to add the descriptor that I'm a student athlete. Because you said that I was a student, I'm a student. When you said that I was an athlete, I'm an athlete. And you know that. So if you're talking about athletes that happen to be students, that's one thing. You refer to them as athletes when you're talking to them about their athletic ability. But when you're not, and it changes the mindset and changes the focus, when you remind them that they are students, right? So focusing on education starts with small stuff like that. I'm not going to segment you out from the rest of the student population just because you're an athlete. You are a student. Just like everybody else. You are here, you're supposed to be learning, and you're supposed to be getting all the information that all the other students in this class get because you are a student. Yeah, but I'm a student athlete. What does that mean? As we sit here in this biology class, you are a student just like everybody else. When you go out on the football field, you're an athlete just like all the other athletes that are on the football field. There's no time in between where I want less of you as a student because you also happen to be an athlete. And in the minds of people who hear that term, that's precisely what it does. It sets them apart from the other students that are in their class. How do I make sure that the athletes are focusing on the student part? How would I do it? Well, there's some built-in triggers like you not having the ability to be an athlete if you don't focus on the student part. But also there's some great life lessons from folks who we've just talked about, right? Like life lessons like how the percentages are naturally against you becoming a professional athlete. So why not focus on making sure you understand what it is that you want to do? And even if you have to use the professional athlete as a part of the driver to their focus, remember this, the average career of an NFL player is about 3.25 years. So that means even if you make it to the professional ranks and you become a professional football player at the age of 22 because you graduated from college and you got drafted in the NFL, 3.25 years from then, when you're 25, 26 years old, you're going to have to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. And
can you say that one more time, Mr. Briggs? So if you do make it, if you do make it, the average length of an NFL career is
3.25 years.
3.25 years. Okay.
Yeah. So by the time you are 25, 26 years old, you're more than likely out of the National Football League and you have to work for the rest of your life because you didn't earn enough money to take care of yourself and your family for the rest of your life. So when you start thinking through what your major is going to be, what you're doing with your education, even if you become a professional athlete, those things become even more important because you will be something other than a professional athlete for a lot longer than
Most
you will
of the
be a
time.
professional athlete.
And what are your chances of getting injured?
The NFL has a 100% injury rate.
Wow.
100%.
Yeah, we have a 100% injury rate. There's every player that's ever been in the National Football League has an injury.
Wow.
I want to say, and don't quote me, I want to say years ago that it was Emmitt Smith in some interview that said it was like being hit by a Mack truck every day. That's what it was like. So yeah, that's
All right.
Wow.
So
Oh, go ahead.
So I was just going to say that those combining factors, the injury rate combined with the career length on average, should tell you that you got to think about what it is you want to do. And sure, like everybody wants to be a sportscaster or, they want to be on ESPN. But I ask you to just sit back and think as a parent, as a person listening to this podcast, right? Like, how many of those guys do you actually see? Let's just run some numbers. Every year, there are about 300 guys that get drafted into the National Football League. Now, there are about 3,000 guys that will sign an NFL contract during the course of a year, right? Because there are 32 teams. They start training camp with 90 guys under contract. Out of those 90 guys that are under contract, they will cut their rosters down to about 53 guys. And those 53 guys will go on for the rest of the season. That number may vary a bit if they have injuries during the year. So that number at the end of the year looks somewhere between 53 and 60 guys over the course of a year that will have an NFL paycheck, right? Out of those 300 guys that got drafted, there will also probably be 300 to 700 guys that were NFL players at some point during the year, but never earned a paycheck. So, that 3,000 when stacked up against the over, I want to say it's about 200,000 college football players in the United States of America every year, right? 300 of those will be drafted. And then out of those 3,000 guys, the average career is about 3 years long. I mean, the NFL does a great job of selling that there is longevity by making you focus on those players that you are familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of our situation is that on most teams, there are about 4 players that you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I just told you that there are 53 guys under contract.
Mm-hmm.
So that means there are about 49 guys, or 49 or 50 guys. You don't have a clue who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their family knows them. Their hometown knows them. Hometown heroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have to keep you under contract, and there won't be any revolt or protest if I cut you or terminate you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, now that we're talking about the professional ranks, and I know like we're probably going to butt up against time here, so I'll just sneak this in on the back end really quickly. Like, yeah, sure, you've made it to the professional ranks. Yeah, sure, you've signed an NFL contract and you're going to training camp. But that is not a guarantee that you're going to get paid. And furthermore, when you are getting paid as an NFL player, there are also ways that you can lose a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those people that you've trusted as advisors could take your money because they don't think that you're sophisticated enough to watch your bank accounts.
Mm-hmm.
You could also participate in off-the-field activities, which could result in fines and fees and things being taken out of your paycheck.
Yes.
There are players in the National Football League right now that are playing for free. It looks glamorous. I'm on TV. I have a helmet on. I'm performing services under my football player contract. But then I go home on Friday and see a pay stub that says $0 because of a penalty that I've incurred, either because of on the field antics or something I've done off the field, like use drugs in violation of one of our drug policies or a personal conduct policy because I got into a fight at the club.
Mm-hmm.
So can we talk about, because I'm always very interested when it comes to finances.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about the fact that you said, was it $500,000 the first year in?
Yeah, under our collective bargaining agreement, first year players, 500,000.
Okay, so I remember when, to me, that sounded like a whole lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, you know,
Mhm.
but when you think about buying a house, and my thing with this is, buying the house is one thing. You then have to maintain the
Mhm.
house. So everything that goes along with that costs money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Well, let
I
me add a
know,
wrinkle. Let me add a wrinkle to it.
yes,
You're making $500,000, but this
yeah.
is your first job.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike the folks listening to your podcast who know they're going to get paid every 2 weeks for the entire year over a 52-week time period,
Mhm.
NFL players now, before this year, they got paid 17 paychecks during the season. So you show up, you play, on Tuesday, you get a paycheck. If you show up, you don't play, on Tuesday, you don't get a paycheck. And you could show up because they have what's called the active inactive roster. You could be under NFL player contract. Your contract can say that you get $500,000 if you play, but it'll have a second lower number on your contract that says if you don't play, that's what they get to pay you this week.
Mm.
So, and you don't know that you're going to play or not until you show up to the stadium on Saturday. So, like, you could literally be an NFL player. You could literally have the big news story about how you're under a $2 million contract because you signed a 4-year deal that was $500,000 a year, and all that stuff's great in the news, and your family thinks that you've got $2 million in your pocket. But in actuality, they had a lower amount in your contract that said, well, if you show up and there's no locker, there's no pads in your locker because you're not playing today, instead of you making $75,000 this week, you're going to make $10,000 this week.
Mm.
Now imagine if you showed up to your job and you were expecting to get a paycheck for $750 and they came to you and said, well, no, actually you didn't work this week, so we only going to give you $100.
Mm.
All of these are things that family members need to know going into these scenarios. There's some good books out there. In fact, I'm thinking about writing one myself to kind of help people understand this stuff. One of my friends, Mark Eisenberg, wrote a book, and I've reached out to him. I'm going to reach out to him again. The book's called Money Player. About updating the book because we've now negotiated a couple more CBAs and the money numbers, figures, things have changed. Society has changed a bit since he wrote the book. But there's just like, you don't know this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's teaching you this stuff. And the society, the closest that most people have gotten to this is maybe Ballers, right? Ballers has some of this, but even in Ballers, they talk about the guys at the top of the curve that are at the extreme. Same thing with The Game, which was a pretty decent show. They talk about guys that are at the top of the extreme and that are making a bunch of money. But there are a bunch of guys that are making minimum wage in the NFL. And I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy for you to think like $500,000 is minimum wage. But listen to me when I say to you, if I'm making $500,000 and a little bit more for 3 years, that is not enough money to last me 30 years.
It's not.
It's not.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we have to think about it.
It is
You are
not.
earning this large amount of money in a very finite period of time, but once that earning cycle ends, because you did not have a degree that you liked, because you had not focused on your next career, you will fall below the poverty line in most instances, and it will take you 10 to 15 years to climb back up to the average level of income and earnings for the people in your same class, high school graduating class. And during that time, because you were so used to living your lifestyle in a certain way, you will moderate that. For you and all of the people who you tried to bring along with you, you're going to find yourself in a very tough situation. And like we talked about earlier in the podcast, when you start looking around for who you can talk to about all this pressure that you're feeling, who are you going to see? A bunch of people who have different expectations from you, at least in your mind, and you're not feel comfortable talking to any of them. So then you withdraw.
Yep.
And then it becomes something that you're dealing with on your own, which is why we should normalize therapy as well.
Yes. Wow. I'm shocked that when they sign that contract, and they signed it so quickly, they probably don't read it. They're just happy they have a contract. So they don't read and see that lower amount.
No, they see it. They just don't have the ability to negotiate against it. And though they know that it's there, you talk to 20-year-olds.
Yeah. I'm going to play.
NFL.
I'm going to play. I'm going to play. Yeah.
I'm gonna play.
Yeah.
They love me.
I'm the best.
I'm the best thing going right now.
Yes.
So they gonna love me until I twist my ankle.
Mm-hmm.
Until I get a step slow.
So is part of your job helping the players learn how to manage their money?
No, we don't do that. We set up a bunch of services that they can take advantage of, a bunch of trainings that they can do online, virtual, people that they can talk to who are financial professionals who can have conversations with them about managing their portfolio. My job is to hit you in the face with the reality of your situation and tell you that there are resources right over there if you want.
Mm-hmm.
Don't come in here thinking that you Warren Buffett. You're not. Reality of the situation is that you could be broke tomorrow. So that you can avoid that, I'm telling you, there are resources right over there that you can go take advantage of. Go read, go look at them, go send some to your parents, go talk to your girlfriend about it, make sure your wife understands. Like, y'all want to have 7 kids? Cool. You can't afford 7 kids. You're going to be working for the rest of your life. You need to make sure that she understands that too. Because the other part of this is, as soon as you get done playing, there's a 78% divorce rate.
Oh.
And when you get divorced, now 50% of the resource that you were able to keep have also walked out the door, with an additional 16.8% going for childcare.
This confirms every message I have ever tried to send to my students. You have to be careful of the company you keep. Learn to live below you. Every message. And what is bothering me, I feel like my face has been I'm looking like I'm in pain this whole podcast. It's even worse than I thought. It's worse than I thought.
Listen, let's end this on a high note.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the happy stuff, right?
Okay.
Some of the happy stuff, right? What we've been able to do is, one, put together those resources so that players can find them out. So you don't have to be out there floating on your own. 2, we've negotiated and made sure that every player in the National Football League has access to a great health insurance that includes counseling services, not only for them, for any of their family members that they want to go to at any time at no cost to them.
Wow.
So if you're a guy who's in the NFL, you got issues with your mama, with your baby mama, with your mama's mama, you and them can go have a counseling session at no cost to any of them. You can send them to go have a counseling session at no cost to them and no cost to you, right? You got to deal with that stuff. We've also built out a program called the Players Trust, which allows players who have had at least 2 credited seasons or at least 2 years in the NFL, average career is 3.5. If you got 2, that program provides specific support services for transition out of the football world. Not just for those guys who've had 2 years, but for any guy who's ever been in the NFL, who's had at least 2 years of service. You can go to these folks. They can help you work through what it is that you really want to do with your life. Now that you have a minute to talk about it, there's scholarships available to you. And I'm talking about full scholarships, not partial scholarships. Now it's a scholarship reimbursement, so you have to actually come out of the pocket first, pay for the class, and then give us the grades and then we'll pay you the money back.
Mhm,
At the same time, that's much better than you having to go out here and pay for the class yourself and never get the money back or trying to struggle about loans and all the other stuff. In addition to that, there's some other like business training, and it's not just for college. You can get reimbursement for certificates. If you want to go through a vocational program, you were an NFL player, they made you go to college so that you can get to the NFL, but you really just wanted to be a truck driver. Cool. We help you get your CDL so that you can go and become a truck driver. We help you become a barber so that you become a barber, but you need to go to college to become a barber. But you need to go to college so that you can play football.
right.
You know that now. You're old enough, mature enough now that you figured that out. There are programs to help you with that, right? There are also programs that help you not only if your family have mental health issues or just relationship issues that you need to talk through, but there are also programs that'll help you with that stuff as well. So, it's not just doom and gloom. And on the other side, right, like while the average career is 3.8 years, if you make it to 4 years, then that average jumps to about 6. So for players that are able to get over that hump of that 3.25 to 3.5 years, if you're able to survive the 4, now your career jumps to about 6. And a person with a 6-year NFL career has not only significantly more earnings, but they also have significantly more opportunities to save.
Okay.
There's also a pension that kicks in. So after year 3 in the NFL, you also earn, you'll vest for what's a defined benefit pension plan, which is unheard of outside of the world of sport. Everybody's gotten rid of their pension. Nobody has, a retirement plan that includes a defined benefit pension anymore. But specifically, if you're an NFL player and you're able to play for 3 years under an NFL player contract, you, at the time you retire, when you get 55, 60 years old, will have a pension benefit that'll be paid out to you, right? In addition to that, every year that you're in NFL, if you make it to 3 years, you also qualify for our 401k plan, which has a 2-to-1 match. And it's an opt-out program, not an opt-in program. So once you sign your NFL contract, you get to 3 years, you have to tell them, I don't want your money. Like, I don't want you to match my 401k 2 times to every $1 that I put in. And I mean, who's going to say that, right?
Right.
You had to opt in, and we had very low numbers. Less than 50% of our players were opting in because they just didn't understand why they were giving somebody $1 so that they can match it with $2. They didn't trust people. Whatever, I can invest my money better myself. Well, now we've switched it. It's an opt-out program. We're going to give you this money. You got to tell us not to give you this money. So you're getting a pension, you're getting a 401k, you're getting access to all the educational services, counseling services. There's post-career medical and healthcare benefit through a health savings account that you have access to. So if you are able to make it, and if you are successful, and if you can focus enough on all the things that you need to do to get to 4 years in your NFL career, you'll jump up to 6 years in your NFL career, and you'll be able to retire usually around 29, 30 years old from an NFL career, while also being able to think through and process all of the stuff you've been through over the 6 years of your NFL career, knowing that there's probably a safer landing or softer landing for you on the other side. It doesn't happen for everybody. Some people still have very hard landings. But we've tried to build in some pillows that we could throw around on the ground. Hopefully you'll hit one of them, and you'll save yourself a little bit of the bumps and bruises that you would have otherwise had to experience if the pillows didn't exist. So hopefully that made somebody feel better. Like, it ain't all doom and gloom.
No, it's not.
And it's also fun, right? You get to be a professional athlete. It's fun that happens. You develop relationships in the locker room and all that other stuff. I'm not discouraging anyone from trying to become a professional athlete. I'm not discouraging parents from encouraging their kids to become professional athletes. Hell, I've been working in this industry for long enough that I would not do that. But what I am saying is do it the right way. Right? Like,
there's a right way.
There's a right way and there's a wrong way. And the wrong way is 100% foot on the gas, balls to the wall. This is all I'm focused on, and I don't care about nothing else.
Yeah.
Because then as soon as a bump comes up in the road, because you haven't focused on anything else, it'll throw everything off.
You're spiraling.
And now you're spiraling, and it's out of control, and it's terrible.
Yes. Okay.
Well, we need more of you.
Yes.
Write that book.
Yes.
Yes, please.
And then come back.
Yes, come back and promote it. Yes.
Yes.
Write that book. Yeah.
The village needs it.
Yes.
Parents' Guide to Professional Athletics, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Boom.
Parents' Guide to Sports and Athletics, something. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
You write it, we'll title it.
Cool. We'll figure it out.
Because we're great at titling things, apparently. So thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Hopefully I've given you guys enough content for your podcast.
Eye-opening, sir.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
If I missed out on anything or you guys get any questions, I'm happy to come back for part 2.
Awesome.
Okay.
I thought that was already established. No?
Yeah, well,
Yes.
I put it on my calendar, not his. Oops. Oopsie.
It's not like I'm gonna say no to my sister, so
Yes. So we there's lots more to talk about and to unpack. So this was amazing. This was great. I don't know. I don't know that there's much else for us to really say, because you've given so much to think about. I think I was sitting here, it's like there's so much. What is the charge? What is every podcast we charge our village?
do you want me to give a charge to the village? Because I got a charge.
Oh,
Go
ahead.
My charge to the village is that you this week learn about the professional athletes from your neighborhood. Think through their professional athletes or even college athletes if you don't know of any professional athletes. And I'm not limiting this to football. I'm talking about Olympics. I'm talking about track and field. I'm talking about swimming. Wherever you're from, there's probably someone who's participated in athletics that's from either your hometown, your home county, or somewhere near where you're from. Look at the trajectory of their lives. Just look at it. Just figure out what happened. Like, how did they get from here to wherever they are today? And in doing that research, you will find a guide for yourself. Some of the right things that have happened, some of the wrong things that have happened, but at least you'll have a baseline for what it looks like to go from where you are to where you may want your child or yourself to be.
Yes.
And adjust. Because far too many times people have examples sitting right in front of them, those tangible, touchable examples. And they've ignored those so that they can see examples of people who they've never met, who never experienced the things that they have, and who've never had to go through the things that they've also had to experience to get to where they are currently.
Right.
So my charge to your listeners, watchers, viewers, subscribers, and the people who hopefully at some point will pay you money for doing this work, because everyone should get paid.
Yes.
Is that they go out and research a professional or college athlete from where they're from, hometown or home county, and figure out how they got from where they were to wherever they are.
Love it.
I do too.
Yes.
And of course, you know what your charge is. I said, of course, you know what your charge is. You're going to write that book.
Write that book.
Write a book. Okay, I gotta write a book.
It's your charge. Write the book. Write the book, my brother. Write the book.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody's doing Zoom now. Maybe I'll do a visual book. 10 chapters on Parents' Guide to Sports and Athletics.
Visual book. I like that. Love it.
All
So,
right.
Do it.
Ms. Miller, Ms.
Yes.
Mendel Miller.
Yes. Today, did you usually set it up? I'm sorry. Go ahead and set it up.
Thank you. So now we're going to kick it over to Mendel Miller for our A-worthy moment. If we had a studio, y'all get tired of me saying this. If we had a studio, brother, it would, in my mind, it would do this. shoom, and pan right over to Mendel, who will be standing in a different location, maybe a green screen behind her with a different picture every time that we kick it over to her. I know, Mendel, I'm manifesting, okay?
Yes.
Let me manifest our studio. We kick it over, she has a different setting each time, and she would give us our A-worthy moment.
Yeah, for this moment, I wanted to highlight a group of high school students in Chicago. They live on the West Side. They live in an area, get this, there are 12 liquor stores in a 1-mile radius, and they're in that neighborhood. They were angry, they were frustrated about what happened, what happened this summer with George Floyd, and they wanted to do something positive. They wanted to provide their community with something that it needed. And so they had the idea to turn a looted liquor store into a fresh food market. And they reached out to, Mr. Briggs was talking about hope. They reached out to, I believe he's a former player now, Sam Acho. Played for the Bears, and he enlisted the help of some of his player friends, and they came up with the $500,000 that they needed to come up with this fresh food market. And man, I think that is just, and those kids are activists. They, in the truest sense of the word, are activists. They saw a need and decided, hey, let's do this. So there is now a fresh food market that people can go to, and the students work at it after school, and they get paid for that. So isn't that awesome?
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. So let's give them their A's.
Yes, for you 12 Chicago students from the west side of Chicago.
Yes.
We here at the Village want to give you an
Hey.
Hey!
Hey.
Yes,
Hey!
you don't get to see this when you're just listening. Yes, that is amazing. Activism.
Yeah, I
It's
thought
best.
too. I thought back to one of our episodes when we talked about doing hard things. One of those
Yes.
things is doing something so big that you need help from other people to do it. And I thought, wow, that's really, really something. So yeah, great. This was eye-opening. You hear me?
Yes.
Eye-opening.
Man.
So to all our listeners, we want to encourage you to share our podcast, join our Facebook group, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Real Village Podcast.
Yes. And with that being said,
Village
out.
Village out.